With that, we're off and running. Another brand new live edition Talking Ball. 97.7 ESPN The Zone live from SEC Media Days 2022. Still atop the College Football Hall of Fame. And today we have to thank Bill Penny Toyota for presenting today's coverage from SEC Media Days. Bill Penny Toyota, they are your certified Toyota dealer serving drivers throughout Huntsville and the surrounding areas. Hey, don't forget, at Bill Penny Toyota, you will find a solid selection of new Toyotas for sale, as well as a carefully inspected line of pre-owned vehicles. They have a well-connected finance center. They can run qualified finance deals for you. They can help you get the right loan or lease in a quick and easy, transparent manner. It is Bill Penny Toyota, 256-837-1111. That'll get you a hold of anybody there at Bill Penny Toyota. It is the final day of SEC Media Days, and we have three great teams today. Auburn and Brian Harson, along with Tank Bixby, Derek Hall, and John Samuel Shanker, they are up first this morning. That'll lead into the Tennessee Volunteers and Josh Heupel and company. And then to close it all down, to burn it all down, to set the College Football Hall of Fame on fire, Jimbo Fisher in Texas A&M.
Yeah, we've kind of been waiting on Jimbo Fisher all week to kind of see what his thoughts are going to be, what questions is he going to be asked. It's going to be very interesting to see his take on things and see if he's, somewhat calmed down from what we heard just a couple of months ago, and we know he set the college football and SEC world on fire, accusing Nick Saban of being unethical and, of course, saying he needed to be slapped, and then having his own member of his organization tell players and recruits that they would be paid to come to Texas A&M. So it's going to be very interesting to see. We're going to hear from Owen Buchanan here in hour number one. And kind of preview what the Texas A&M Aggies, because there's a lot of expectation there. They were disappointing last year at 8-4 after beating Alabama early in the season in College Station. They've got to come to Tuscaloosa, as everyone knows, on October the 8th, the second game of that month after a trip to Fayetteville, which is could be a little hairy for Alabama, but going to be interesting because there's going to be so much media attention on the Texas A&M Alabama matchup. It's really, Will Anderson was already asked about it this week, made some headlines. Going to be interesting to see what the A&M head coach and the players he's bringing. But one of them, Scott, I know you mentioned it to our listeners yesterday to end the show, is not going to be here today.
Yeah, he ran into a little bit of trouble, did Anaya Smith. Just a little bit of trouble, and I say that because he was being held on an $8,000 bond, driving while intoxicated, and a weapon and a marijuana charge, less than 2 ounces. So that is what Anaya Smith is facing. It was a $8,000 bond, $4,000 for the DWI charge, $2,000 apiece for the weapon and marijuana charges. He played in all 12 games last year. He had 47 receptions, 6 touchdowns.
I think he's probably their most dynamic weapon. He can play running back. He can play receiver. Obviously, before this situation happened, Jimbo Fisher considered him a leader on the team and a guy that could be a captain. So,
well, if you come here, if you're selected to be here, generally you are supposed to be a leader. Mm-hmm. Generally.
Yes, and speaking of generals and General Nealon and the Tennessee Volunteers, our next guest is with us now live here on Radio Row on Talking Ball here live at the College Football Hall of Fame. We always enjoy catching up with him for a few quick minutes each year at this event, and it's a longtime fixture covering Tennessee from Sports Radio WNML, and you can hear him from 3 to 7 Eastern Time today, and he's going to be very busy this morning, and that's going to be Jimmy Hines. Jimmy, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's the first time I've had my name mentioned with General Nealon in the same sentence, so I really appreciate that.
Hey, man, and I know you knew Coach Majors really well, a legend at Tennessee also. And how much more positive, though, is it? There was so much uncertainty and anxiety, I thought, last year at this time in Hoover, considering Tennessee and all they lost, the 45 guys from the signing class and the transfer portal total. And I said this then. I said if they have a winning season, Josh Heupel should get Coach of the Year. consideration, and they did. And now a lot of buzz about Tennessee maybe being in the top 4 teams in this league, Jimmy.
Yes, there is a lot of buzz about that. In fact, I've heard a couple of people wondering, could Tennessee maybe be the 3rd best team behind Alabama and Georgia? I'm not ready to go there yet because I don't think defensively they are good enough to do that. They may prove me wrong, but I think they're in the conversation among that group, which would include the LSUs, the Texas A&Ms. Look, their roster is not as good as A&M or LSU, in my opinion, but their offense is terrific. And the reason for optimism in Knoxville is because of that offense. Look, they set a school record for points scored last year. They may break that again this year. They got the quarterback in place. They got a terrific receiver. Yeah. They got good running back. They've added a little bit of depth at running back. Their offensive line is okay. It's good enough. They're okay at tight end. But it's hard to defend this offense now. But the whole key to success will be don't look at defensive numbers. Look at whether or not the defense can make a stop in the 4th quarter when they have to. If they can do that, then they can have a really nice year. But if they can't, then they're looking at another 500 type season.
You mentioned the quarterback position solid. We were sitting here last year. I don't want to say it was solid last year, but we thought we knew where we were going. Now Josh Heupel knows who's going to be there, and that's Hendon Hooker. And it always helps going into a spring, into a fall, when you know who is going to be the one throwing the ball.
Absolutely. And look, Hendon Hooker surprised a lot of people. He surprised the coaching staff because they went with Joe Milton. He surprised people with his running ability, which he shouldn't have, because when he was at Virginia Tech, he had 2 150-yard running games. So I knew the guy had wheels. What I didn't know was whether he could operate an up-tempo offense like that, make those quick decisions you got to make, be that accurate, setting a school record for passing efficiency, for pass completions. His touchdown to interception ratio is 31-3. That's brilliant. I mean, that's Peyton Manning stuff right there, right? So, and what he did, and he brought that running ability with him. Now, Tennessee's going to try to be kind of careful with the running. Here's what I envision. If you're playing a team that you're supposed to beat and will beat, you don't need to run Hendon Hooker 10 or 15 times. But if you're playing Georgia or Alabama or LSU, maybe Pitt, you're going to have to use his legs. So you can save him for what I would consider some of the lesser opponents, but you better bring him with all the arsenal when you play the better teams to give you a chance.
Well, you already mentioned it. Last year coming in, Cedric Tillman had 8 catches in his career. He ends up with 64. He torched Georgia. He torched Alabama, had over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns. He's coming back as one of the best receivers in the league. But my question to you, Jimmy, because Velus Jones, an underrated player in my opinion, moves on to the NFL, the Bears. Who's going to complement Tillman? Because he's going to draw a lot more attention now that he's produced. He
will draw more attention. One thing I like about Tennessee is they can draw up plays to counter that attention. They can put him in motion or they can stack him. Now, I think Jalen Hyatt's going to have a big year. He was disappointing last year. He dropped too many passes. When he started dropping passes, he lost his confidence. And so basically Tennessee went almost with the 3-man rotation at receiver, Devontae Payton being the other guy. But you also got Drew McCoy. He was a 5-star. Went to Southern Cal, then to Texas, back to Southern Cal. Now he's at Tennessee. Right. So he has the ability to be really good. We don't know yet about him. But they've got Jimmy Holiday, Jimmy Callaway. They've got other guys from Mel Keaton, other possibilities. But look, and to me, here's why I'm confident they'll find somebody, because you mentioned it. Cedric Tillman had 8 catches in 3 years. And look what he did. So I think they can find somebody. I think they're good enough at developing players. Their system is good enough. I think they'll find other receivers to complement Tillman based on what they did with Tillman last year.
We've talked Hendon Hooker. We've talked offense. That's Josh Heupel. When you talk Josh Heupel, you talk offense. But did the defense get any better from last year to this year? Obviously, it takes a lot to play in that system, because you know you're going to be on the field probably within a minute or 2 minutes after coming off the field. What did the defense learn? What did the players learn? Did they address some of the depth between now and then?
They tried to address some of the depth, but I'm not sure that they were able to get there. They lost their best defensive lineman in Matthew Butler, who played an inordinate number of snaps. They lost their 2 best defensive backs in Theo Jackson and Alontae Taylor. Those are holes that'll be hard to fill. Those are basically two cornerbacks. One played corner, one played the star, but that's basically a cornerback position. They're good at the safety positions. But beyond that, here's the way they could become a better defensive team, and that is to ratchet it up the pass rush.
Okay.
Byron Young is a guy that I think can get to double digits in sacks. Tyler Barron is a 4 or 5 sack guy that needs to become an 8 or 9 sack guy. Roman Harrison, same thing. He needs to become an 8 or 9 sack guy. If those guys come through, and if they can make a sack or a key stop here in the second half or the fourth quarter of a game, the defense can be better. But the numbers on defense are not going to look good. They're just not. But can you make that key stop late in the game to help you win? That's going to be the question about Tennessee.
Well, and I think the biggest question too is the back end, the secondary. They've got to make more plays. They've got to. When you play the way Tennessee does, the biggest thing is, as you just talked about, is pass rush disruption and forcing turnovers. You've got to set your offense up, and when the opportunities are there, cash in, because people forget they nearly beat Pitt, who won the ACC. They nearly beat Ole Miss. And then the Alabama game was a one-score game, basically going to the fourth quarter before everything fell apart. So they were close to having an unbelievable Cinderella season, but now that next step is probably the hardest one.
Yeah, I think it is. And that's where the defense comes in, because, again, offensively, I think they'll be fine. But here's something, as good as that offense was, this is where they were not good. Short yardage situation. They have got to get better at that. If it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, they got to be able to convert. And that'll help the defense because it'll keep them off the field. But the other part of that, Tennessee, last year they led the nation in first quarter scoring. I think they led the nation in
191 points, I think.
I think that's what, and I think they led the nation in first quarter score differential. The second quarter, not so much. They got outscored in the second quarter. So was that the defense getting adjusted to the speed? I'm sure that was a part of it. Was it adjusting to the scheme? Probably. So what does Tennessee do to counter that? You can't outscore somebody by 17 in the first quarter and then they outscore you by 17 in the second quarter. So they need to become a better second quarter team as well.
Alabama and Georgia obviously sit on the schedule as normal. We know that those are going to be uphill battles. But does Tennessee line up? Does Tennessee compete well against that middle of the pack this year against the SEC? The Kentuckys, the Missouris, those teams.
I thought the Kentucky win was their biggest of the year last year, really, honestly, for me.
I thought it was too.
45-42.
Hey, that was a 10-win Kentucky team. Kentucky's only done that 4 times in school history.
Yep.
On the road. And you only had to have the ball 15 minutes on offense to do it. How about that? Which was an anomaly. I think that Tennessee, the Kentucky game, I'll take Tennessee to beat Kentucky just because they do.
Right.
They seem to be the boogeyman.
Not that I think Tennessee's better.
Right.
But look, and they just manhandled Missouri. That was no contest. South Carolina was not a contest either, but South Carolina's going to be a lot better. So you got to deal with that. You got to deal with LSU.
Yes.
Which is going to be a talented team, but we don't know about the chemistry. You bring in 14 and the transfer portal. Who knows what they're going to look like, but they're going to have good players. So in terms of and then Florida, it's about time they beat Florida, right? They've lost, 16 out of 17.
Yeah,
and I think
that's amazing.
It is. And some of those Florida teams weren't that good.
Exactly. They've had a lot of instability at head coach as well, and this is you're facing a first-year guy in Billy Napier. You've got a quarterback back. You've got a great receiver. And then you got Javaris Small, who took over for Tyon Evans. If that running game can be a little more consistent, to me, they've got the roster where they could beat the Gators.
And you're at home.
And you're at home.
Yeah.
So, to me, you're going to lose to Alabama and Georgia.
Yes.
All right? Now, how do you do – what's your record against Pitt, LSU, South Carolina, Florida, those middle teams?
Those middle games. Yep.
And I think against those teams, they could potentially go like 4-1. So, they could win 9. Anything less than 8 would be very disappointing for Tennessee. Anything less than 8 wins. So, but they've raised the bar. They won 7 regular season games last year. You want to improve on that, and I think they probably should and can. even though I still have a lot of questions about the defense.
No doubt. Well, we never have any questions about your knowledge of the Vols and what you give us and the information. We love you, Jimmy, man. You've been around so long, done such a great job covering Tennessee. You and Vince are two of our favorite people, and we appreciate you. And, again, let everybody know how to connect with you over at Sports Radio WNML.
Well, you can on iHeartRadio, you can find us. You can find us at 991dsportsannal.com. You can find my blogs there. You can also find me on Twitter at Jimmy Hines. And hope that I'm trying to get to at least 60,000 followers. I'm shy of that. Maybe if I'll say something stupid, I can get there. Because when you do that, a lot of people want to know. Hey,
maybe
look
they'll
at
get rid
that
of
guy
some of
said.
those fake accounts too.
Yeah.
Everybody watch it.
If you count in my fake accounts, I'm over 100,000. Yeah. There you go.
The fake accounts.
That's why Elon Musk wouldn't buy Twitter.
There you
He
go.
saw
Yes.
that I had all those fake accounts.
Yes.
And said, I'm not doing that to that guy.
Well,
Wow.
thank you, Jimmy. We appreciate the time, man. Enjoy the coverage today, and we look forward to it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Jimmy.
it. Thanks for having me.
Let's get a break in here from the College Football Hall of Fame. Final day of SEC Media Days. How about those Texas A&M Aggies? We'll break them down with Olin Buchanan next. Welcome back to Talking Ball, 97.7 ESPN The Zone. Day 4 of SEC Media Days presented by Bill Penny Toyota. Make sure you stop at Bill Penny Toyota right along University Drive. They are the Toyota dealer throughout Huntsville and the surrounding areas. You're going to find a solid selection of new Toyotas as well as some good pre-owned, quality-inspected pre-owned vehicles. Stop in there, visit their well-connected finance department so you can drive off with a brand new Bill Penny Toyota today. Bill Penny Toyota, proud presenting sponsor of our final day of SEC Media Days. We mentioned right out of the gates, you're going to get the Auburn Tigers this morning. Brian Harson and company have already arrived here at the College Football Hall of Fame. They did so just a few minutes ago. And they are getting ready to start making their rounds around the College Football Hall of Fame. And then to close it all down, Jimbo Fisher, the Texas A&M Aggies, they should get their day started, meeting everyone around 10:15 this morning. So that is how we kind of wind things down today.
Yeah, Jimbo Fisher will be the last head coach we hear from, and certainly we've heard from him throughout the offseason. It's probably been the most headlines we've had. And our next guest, who's been poking fun at some Alabama fans all week on Twitter and drawing the ire of them.
That's what he's supposed to do.
And that's, yeah, exactly right. Is one of my favorite people. He's probably the first person I ever met at SEC Media Days 7 years ago. Used to read his stuff when he was at in another time when he was at Rivals.com. Now he's at TexAgs. And he knows the Aggies better than anyone, and we always love catching up with Owen Buchanan. Owen, good morning, man.
Good morning. Yeah, I have to admit I like stirring the pot a little bit. This is the time for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jimbo stirred it a little bit. Nick stirred it a little bit. Everyone, I guess, has had some thought on everything this offseason.
Now, what's going on between Alabama and A&M? Now, I know Alabama, Auburn's a different animal when it comes to A&M.
Yeah.
So, but I wonder who would be next on Alabama's list of teams they just don't like.
Well, see, LSU's been there for a while.
But I think
that was the rivalry.
Rising,
that was the scoreboard rivals type of thing, Nick, and all that other stuff.
But when you beat Alabama,
Texas,
that's how you start
when
getting under the skin.
When A&M joined the SEC, all these Aggies were like, they were very excited about it, but they lamented having lost a great rival, right? Because they weren't playing Texas. And they would always talk about, we're going to start this rivalry with LSU, and it seemed manufactured. My take was always, why are you settling for LSU? Why don't you aim higher and be that team, replace LSU as that team that, Alabama is, that you're a rock in their shoe.
Well, and historically, there's so many ties between the two schools, coaching-wise.
Well, Gene and
Coach
Bear
Brian and even Fran. I know that neither school want to remember that.
I think Fran Tony was like the coach to be named later in the trade, and I think y'all got the better end of the deal on that one.
Yeah, well,
a lot of people are thinking today's going to be one of those days, and then they're sitting on the edge of their seats with great anticipation that Jimbo Fisher's going to say something today. We're going to get all these fireworks. It's going to be just another day, though, don't you think? I mean,
well, he's got to answer to to the Anaya Smith story,
right?
Yeah,
right.
Which that didn't help yesterday. Yeah,
which I don't think will warrant more than maybe a game suspension.
Yeah, right.
But. And I would not be surprised if someone brought up just as didn't they bring it up to Nick?
Yeah, they tried to. Yeah,
and just kind of. But that's old news now. I mean, I was in Destin 6 weeks ago and asking them about that, and then it kind of peaked, and then they came back and said, okay, it's over. And, and I think Greg Sankey had something to played the
principal card or whatever.
I was going to be not the peacemaker, and so I think that's old news now. And now it's just if you keep bringing that up, it's almost like, do you have nothing else to look forward to and write about? And I think we do.
Well, Nolan, you told us for 2 years, and I think he's their most dynamic player, Anaya Smith. He does get in trouble though. He was being brought here because I think Jimbo he's gonna be a huge part of the offense. He obviously liked him as a leader. He wouldn't bring him here. We know what happened yesterday. So is this a cause for concern in any way?
Well, I mean, you don't want to try to look like you're trying to spin something. He got arrested. he was going 51 and a 35. Now they did give him a breath test, and he came in well under the Texas legal limit.
Right.
But I think they found, I think I read it was 0.29 ounces. Or
it's less than 2 ounces.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. I don't partake.
No.
So I don't know if that's a large amount of weed or not. I'm told it's not.
I don't know. I smelled something on an elevator a couple days ago.
Yeah, we did. We did. The parking garage elevator smelled like 2 ounces.
So to me, so y'all can relate. It sounds a little bit like the whole Cam Robinson deal a few years ago.
Okay. Yeah, right.
I know there was a weapon involved in that one too.
Very similar.
So, and I don't. Maybe you guys can refresh my memory. What was, what happened if Cam Robinson was suspended? I think it's going to be whatever that was. I mean, not that A&M's looking for that as a guideline, but I think it'll probably be somewhat similar to whatever that was.
Yeah.
Texas A&M has a lot of. I mean, when they hired Jimbo Fisher, there were a lot of check marks, goals, not check marks, but goals. One of those beat Alabama during the regular season. They got that done last year. How do they take that next step this year? How do they ultimately climb that ladder one more rung? Obviously, they've gotten by the Alabama once. You want to do it again, but you also got to get through the rest of the West.
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with, you got to be healthy. Yeah. They weren't last year, which has made the win over Alabama that much more remarkable. To be honest, and I'm sure y'all have some Auburn fans listen too, and
right.
I'm not trying to be a wise guy for them, but Zach played one great game last season.
Steven Garcia.
And every other game he was average to below average.
Okay.
And that's just the hard fact. Doesn't mean he can't be better.
Right.
And he did play injured at some point, but it was his first year as a starter, and sometimes he looked like he just was uncomfortable. I'll put it that nice way. And he has a big arm, but he needs to understand that, you don't have to throw the Nolan Ryan fastball when your guy's only 5 or 6 yards away from you. Well, he needs to work on some touch.
Yeah.
Speaking of quarterbacks, though, we really haven't talked a lot about in the offseason, Scott and I, the battle because you bring in Max Johnson, who beat Texas A&M last year from LSU, and then you have Haynes King. And you told us Haynes King, they were very excited about him going into last year. He gets hurt against Colorado. Is it a battle right now, and who leads in your mind?
I don't, in my mind, not that means anything, but in my mind, Haynes leads. And I'll tell you why. Because all we always hear is Jimbo Fisher's offense is so difficult. It's so complex, and it's so difficult to master. And it's always the guy that's been in the offense his second year is when he flourishes. And we saw some of that with Kellen Mond. And I guess, the best example was Jameis Winston at Florida State. And if that's true, the fact of the matter is this will be the third year, even if he's not actually running it, but understanding the offense for Haynes King, it'll be 6 months for Max Johnson. That said, and I don't think any of us ever put too much in a spring game, but if you wanted to look at the spring game, Max outperformed Haynes.
Wow.
So that's going to be a competition, though, that's going to go right, definitely it's going to go deep into August, and they'll probably name a starter about 2 weeks before the opener.
They do have a very favorable schedule, though, out of the gates. 3 good home games there for Texas A&M to kind of take advantage of that. Miami game, intriguing, interesting.
I think they have a good schedule to open up because their first 2 opponents are opponents you should beat, but they're not pushovers. In fact, they play Appalachian State in the second game. If memory serves, Miami beat them like in the last minute last year. I think it was a 2-point game. And, they're going to beat Sam Houston. But Sam Houston, they're winning over the last 5 or 6 years as much as anybody in college football, right? Yeah. For their division, they were dominant. So, I think A&M has they have a lot of proven guys, but they've got some guys that have a lot of potential that haven't, that they're going to be. What do y'all say in Tuscaloosa all the time? Next guy up, or next savage
next
up,
man up,
whatever. Well, they've got to find out if the next guy up that they think is going to play and going to play well is actually going to be able to play well. And I think those 2 games, or even 3, are good enough opponents where you're going to have to work a little bit.
Right.
So.
Well, and I said this on the show yesterday, and I mean this with all due respect, but we know the headlines Texas A&M made with the recruiting class last year. Miami's making those headlines now, so I've called this the NIL Bowl because NIL it has to be dealt with. It's there to stay. And Texas A&M brought in a historic recruiting class, maybe the best ever on paper. Miami has been irrelevant since 2002, and they're bringing in a lot of great players right now. They haven't signed yet, but they've got them committed. And we've heard the headlines from John Ruiz. But this is an intriguing game because we don't really know how good Miami is. We think Texas A&M is going to have a good team, and this is at home. Talk about that third game.
Well, obviously Tyler Van Dyke's a quarterback that's very celebrated and put up some good numbers last year. I think you got to look at it both sides. Some of those defenses he faced, a lot of people put up big numbers on them. So you have to, I think you have to tap the brakes a little bit. And I've covered the SEC longer than that, but 10 years of covering one team and only the SEC.
Yeah.
I have, quite frankly, become an SEC snob. So when it comes to those non-conference games,
right,
I feel in most cases, I mean not Vanderbilt, but in most cases, I'm going to say, I think that SEC team's going to win. I think A&M on paper, despite what Miami has, projects to me to be a better football team. You know the old cliche. It's not. You don't have to be the better football team. You just got to be the better football team that day.
Right. They were better than Alabama last year on that day.
The one thing that we have come to see from Texas A&M, at least in the last couple of years, is the fact that they've got some decent defensive linemen, some good defensive linemen, some good offensive linemen as well. Do they have those big pieces along both lines again this year?
I think their offensive line is going to be better in 4 of the 5 positions. Mainly, you look at 2 guys where you're thinking they're going to be better as sophomores than they were as freshmen. Right. And Layden Robinson played hurt last year, and Trey Zune, who's a redshirt freshman, probably would have played a lot in place of Javaris Johnson, who was also hurt last year. So I think their offense, but in that other that one spot, they're not going to be close to as good as they were at left guard. You're not going to replace Kenyon Green and say, okay, everything's good. No, it's not. And then on the defense, I think they're going to be really good in the interior.
A lot of star power coming in and even returning.
Yeah, you guys might remember McKinley Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
He played with a torn labrum last year, and he's healthy. And he still got out there and was productive, but I think he'll play well. I think they have a guy who's a 5-star guy who played as a freshman and showed flashes named Shamar Turner. Mm-hmm. And then Isaiah Rakes is a guy that is one of those guys that you really don't even know. He's obscure, and then you go back and watch the films. You say, who's this guy playing tackle wearing number 34 that's getting all this stuff done? So in the interior, and then Walter Nolan's coming in, the number 1 recruit. So the interior looks pretty good. The question is, are you going to be able to replace that pass rush of DeMarvin Leal and Michael Clemens and Tyree Johnson? And they have guys that they really feel good about. Tamisi Adelie, who was a 5-star guy, but redshirted last year. Fidel Diggs, a guy they think they like what they've seen in the backup role. But, it's kind of like to go see a car and you can like everything about it. Your Toyota you were talking about earlier, you can go like everything about it.
Right.
But you still got to take it for a test drive to be sold on it. So, they got to still drive it around and see if it's as good as it looks.
Well, guys like Anthony Lucas, who was a 5-star guy at Arizona, Shamar Stewart from Miami. I know Lucas played well in the spring game. Are those a couple of guys that, even as early enrollees, I know they're true freshmen, and sometimes those guys need a year to acclimate. But can they make an immediate impact?
Well, I think they can make an impact. It's the size of the impact. If you're going to ask those guys to come in and say, we want you to be, what Myles Garrett did, and make that kind of impact. Well, come on. How often does that happen? Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the better defensive linemen I've seen the last 10 years was Quinnen Williams.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what he did until that one breakout
year. Sophomore year.
So give them some time. You know, it's unfair, right, to expect a freshman to come in and be great. But in their situation, they've got a Fidel Diggs, and they got Donnell Harris, who is a highly coveted recruit out of Miami, and they got Tumisi Adelier, and they can move Shamar Turner. He's the Marvin Leal type, but you can move him out to the end. He's that athletic if you need to. So they've got guys that I think is going to play most of the snaps, but you may be able to bring in those guys like Shamar Stewart and Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy and Anthony Lucas and play them, you know, in spot roles, and maybe they make an impact that way in that, you know, pinch hitter that can come in the right situation.
Is this a 10-win team?
It needs to be. I think it can be. In fact, I would go so far as say if it's not a 10-win team, this year should be considered a disappointment. Okay. Now that's this is the same thing for everybody.
Yeah.
If you stay reasonably healthy, you know, if
you don't lose your quarterback in week 1, week 2.
if Bryce Young
goes down,
it goes down. You know, are the expectations the same? Maybe, but maybe not. So, but we're going on the theory that everything is they're reasonably healthy. They're in Jimbo Fisher's 5th year. The injury issue was a problem last year. Okay, all right, you got that one. I understand, but it needs to be. They need to be to the point where they are consistently at least a threat in the West Division race. I think they could have been last year with a little bit better luck in injuries, and I think they were 2 years ago. I mean, nobody was going to beat that Alabama team, but I would today, even then, I would have bet that had A&M gotten into the playoff like they should have been, that they would have played a more competitive football game against Alabama than any of the teams Alabama played. First of all, because they didn't have to go up against, you had the injuries at receiver
Waddle.
that year.
Yeah.
Waddle. How could I forget that guy? So who's the big, really good center that went to the Eagles?
Yeah, Landon Dickerson was hurt.
So, A&M got Alabama early in the year at full strength in Tuscaloosa. Of course, I know that year the home field advantage wasn't as pronounced, but still, and they lost by the same margin that Ohio State did, right? I know you don't want to necessarily compare margins, but my point is, I think A&M got better as the season went on. I think everybody would have rather played Alabama without Waddle.
Oh, yeah.
So I think A&M could. What I've said they would have won. I'm not. No. I'm not going to be the Texas Longhorn guy. So if Colt McCoy hadn't gotten hurt, I'm not going to do that. That Alabama team wasn't going to get beat. But I think it could have been more competitive.
Well, and we talked about Anaya Smith, and he's going to be coming back from this situation. We think he's still going to be a big factor. But and you talked about you think Haynes King's going to win this job. But who's going to be the other complimentary parts? Because Isaiah Spiller is a really good back. I don't think he ever got as much credit as he needed. I know you like A-Chain, though. You've always liked him.
I think A-Chain's better.
Yeah, and then is Evan Stewart going to be one of these dudes going to be on the short list for Newcomer of the Year?
He has to be. Evan Stewart is a guy that and he looked really good in the spring for whatever that's worth. But the one thing that's really been missing from A&M is the deep threat, because they never could keep Caleb Chapman healthy. He missed more games the last 2 years than he played. Now he's at Oregon. Mm-hmm. They need somebody that can stretch the defense, and they haven't had it. And so they always have had to work harder to score on long drives, and they need to be able to be that team that can score from anywhere on the field. And they have that ability with A-Chain, but if you can get a receiver that's gonna make those safeties play back, and you can beat them over the top, and then get them playing deep for this guy and run A-Chain, when they're not all in the box, it makes your offense a lot better. So you brought him up, Evan Stewart. He's only a freshman, but he's a big key. They're hoping he can do what Christian Kirk did as a true freshman.
And boy, he was explosive. There's no doubt. Well, Olin, it's always fun to catch up, man. We're looking forward to October the 8th. I think everybody's got it circled. And I know you'll be coming back into the state of Alabama, and your Twitter account and your social media will be very interesting.
I'll probably tweet something controversial that week. Yeah.
Why not?
Why not?
Well,
Why not?
let everybody know how to connect with you guys at TexAgs Radio, TexAgs, and, of course, your Twitter account.
Well, of course, TexAgs.com. It's the abbreviated version of Texas Aggies. So TexAgs.com. You can follow that on Twitter, too, or me personally. And it seems like everybody in the state of Alabama already is. But if you're not one yet, it's just my name, Olin Buchanan. Spell that. That's all you got to do, and you can follow me. I'd appreciate the follow.
Thank you.
Thanks, Olin.
All right.
All right, Olin Buchanan with us. Let's get a break in. SEC Media Days, Day 4, live from the College Football Hall of Fame, presented by Bill Penny Toyota. Welcome back. Talking Ball, 97.7 ESPN, The Zone, live from the College Football Hall of Fame. It is the fourth and final day of SEC Media Days. We're going to wrap it up today and head on back. Today's coverage presented by Bill Penny Toyota. You can find them along University Drive. Give Bill Penny Toyota a call today, 256-837-1111. That is Bill Penny Toyota. You can get Tundras right now for as low as 1.9 APR financing. How about a Camry LE, 1.9? Another Corolla LE, 1.9% financing for qualified buyers. That is Bill Penny Toyota. Now, coming up here at the top of the hour, you're going to be able to hear Brian Harson live right here on 97.7 ESPN. The Zone. 8:05 is when Brian Harson is set to be introduced here. The Tigers have been here for about an hour now, making their way around the College Football Hall of Fame, getting ready for their appearance. Tank Bixby, the running back, will be here. Derek Hall will be here. And John Samuel Shanker for the Auburn Tigers. And if you had 3 or 4 questions for the Auburn Tigers and Brian Harson going into the new year, obviously you kind of have to start with who's going to be that quarterback, I would imagine.
Yeah, it has to be. You heard Owen Buchanan from Texas just with us talking about Zach Calzada's inconsistency. Excuse me, Scott.
Right.
Last year, he only played at a high level for one game with Steven Garcia and had a shining moment against Alabama. The rest, as he said, was average to below average. Can he beat out the LSU transfer, TJ Finley, who got some playing time last year when Bo Nix struggled against Georgia State, and then when Bo got injured toward the latter third of the season? So that battle has to play out. Robbie Ashford had a good spring game. We don't expect him, though, to be a serious threat to start above those other two gentlemen who have some experience. And, of course, Holden Grenier, the true freshman, he probably needs the red shirt and learn the system. So it's going to be a battle of Zach Calzada, TJ Finley. Zach Calzada has the arm talent. He's not quite as big a guy, in my opinion, as Finley, but he certainly has flashed potential.
Is he healthy, though?
Yeah, that's the biggest question. He had shoulder surgery. He didn't go through spring. The most buzz you hear is around Calzada. Most people believe that he is going to eventually win the job, but it's not done yet. And then Tank Bixby. Last year, Scott, I know I made a statement that ended up being incorrect. I thought Tank was headed for a huge year,
right.
Was going to be first-team All-SEC and lead the SEC in rushing. But the Auburn offensive line was just average. It wasn't great. They bring a lot of experience back. Tank came back after entering the transfer portal briefly. Brian Harson got him back out of there. He can be a huge part of this offense, and if he's not a 1,200 or 1,300-yard rusher with, Javon Hunter complimenting him, this Auburn team's not going to, accomplish what they want.
Well, I think you got to look at it, too. Last year, I think there was some discord in the play calling.
Yeah.
I think that they put a lot on Bo Nix, and I think they shied away from the run a little bit, and that was evident because Tank Bixby was going to head into the transfer portal.
Yeah,
and they
Mike
had to
Bobo
re-recruit him. Yeah, they had to re-recruit Tank Bixby, get him back on campus. So I have a feeling the offense, there will be a greater concentration around getting Tank Bixby the ball. I think he will be a center, a focal point of that offense because last year he was early on. And then he disappeared from the offense. The running game, and you alluded to it because the offensive line wasn't great, so it didn't allow them to run a little bit. But Auburn shied away from running that ball under Mike Bobo.
And I think there was the disconnect between him and Brian Harson. They'd never worked together before.
Right.
And that's why I think we saw Mike Bobo dismissed. He's now an analyst at Georgia. His son Drew decommitted from Auburn, ends up at Georgia as well. So Brian Harson promoted wide receivers coach Eric Kiesau, who he'd worked with closely as an OC at Boise State. And Brian Harson was known for running the ball at Boise State. Certainly he wants to be balanced, but I think he wants them to play with more physicality than they did last year. And with an experienced offensive line, run blocking is really what you need to be. I mean, I think Auburn needs to be a running football team, a play-action team. and O-lines and experienced ones are usually good people movers. That's what Auburn needs to be. They have 2 good backs because Hunter has shown a lot of potential as well, and he will be a sophomore. And so I think Auburn needs to play with an edge. They need to be hard-nosed. And you mentioned him. He will be here today. I think John Samuel Shanker, who was underutilized the first part of his career because Gus Malzahn didn't really incorporate the tight end, he became an NFL prospect. It was big to get him back. He's going to be one of the better tight ends in the SEC. The big question, though, for Auburn, Scott, is, and it's the biggest question I think on their football team as a whole, is wide receiver. Who is going to make some
Who's
plays?
Going to catch? You have to have somebody catch the ball.
Who's going to make big plays for Auburn, or explosive plays? Because, again, Tank Bixby, 5, 6, 7 yards.
Right.
But eventually you have to make some chunk plays in the passing game. Who's going to make plays? I thought last year going into the season that Javaris Johnson was going to have a breakout. Never really materialized. He had some drops. He wasn't consistent. They brought in 2 guys from the portal from LSU. They brought in Coy Moore, who was thought to be a factor last year but fell out of favor and transferred. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that goes with Auburn and this wide receiver room that really, to me, is going to have to develop. Shedrick Jackson, the nephew of Bo Jackson, is coming back.
Safe to say the wide receiver room for Auburn is an unproven room. We don't know anything, really, what this offense can do because we don't know what that wide receiver room is capable of.
He was a great player here at Trustville High School with his former teammate, Javaris Johnson. He comes in. He didn't make any plays at Miami, but is he a guy that maybe can be a wild card and make plays?
Well, Brian Harson will explain all of that coming up here next. You're going to hear from Brian Harson live from SEC Media Days right here on 97.7 ESPN The Zone. Scott Tyson here from 97.7 ESPN The Zone. We are here with our Zone Business Spotlight, and I've got our very good friend. You hear his voice all the time, especially when we're out here on Saturdays. It's the managing partner of University Kia, one the only Arthur Seaton. Arthur, thank you so much for sitting here with us. I want to talk cars and I want to talk University Kia all at the same time.
Okay.
Let's talk about University Kia first of all. The number 1 volume Kia dealer in the state of Alabama, the largest volume Kia dealer, and you guys are still rolling through cars left and right during a weird time when it comes for cars.
Also, we are the Kia dealer of the decade. So that's another accolade that we have. But let me tell you, with the car business right now, it's better than it's ever been. You know, it's just right now it's supply and demand. You got to get it while it's hot. You know, you see something, you have to grab it when you see it because waiting one day, it might not be here the next day.
You've been in cars a long time. Mm-hmm. This is something that I don't think we've ever seen before.
Never.
Just talk about what has it been like, the climate changing with cars right now.
Well, the biggest thing is it's like hot potatoes. I mean, as fast as you get it, it's out your hands. I mean, we've never seen it. Most time inventory sits around 30, 60, 90 days. I mean, right now you have a 2-day supply.
And how have you guys been able to manage that 2-day supply?
Well, right now, just customers come in, they like it, they put a deposit down, and that's really how we're working car deals through deposits right now. We know what you want, we look it up, and we make it happen.
I want to talk about advertising as well. You have been with us now, believe it or not, 3 years running for University. How important is it, and how fun has it been with 97.7 ESPN The Zone?
I tell you, man, it's with sports, people really dial into sports, and when they listen to media in the sports, I always listen to the commercials, and I stay engaged because, you're waiting for the score, or you're waiting for somebody to come back and speak, and you're listening to the commercials. And I always hear people tell me, hey, I heard you on The Zone, and I love knowing that my advertisement works.
And then obviously now this has been a fantastic time. It's a busy time, but if people still want cars, don't shy away. Don't think that you can't still get a car just because you drive by a lot and you may see the car that you wanted is not there. You guys still are actively helping people get vehicles.
Right now, our used car market is stronger than ever. We have a very large selection of used cars. We have 100 used cars on the ground here as we speak today. Also, we can make it happen for new cars. I mean, we have like I said, we know what's coming in. We get allocations every week, every Tuesday, so we know what's coming. So if you know what you want, we can make it happen.
All right, he's Arthur Seaton, managing partner of University Kia along University Drive, Monday through Sunday.
Yes.
Got to remember that.
Yes.
Sunday.
Yes.
How's Sunday's been going?
Actually, Sunday has picked up great for us. Some people like to shop on Sundays. It's not as much traffic, and we really have more time to go over the vehicle,
Number 2 of Talking Ball, 97.7 ESPN The Zone. Of course, today's coverage of SEC Media Days, the 4th and final day, presented by, you guessed it, Bill Penny Toyota, right along University Drive. Don't forget, you can stop in and check out all the fine Toyotas at Bill Penny Toyota. How about a Tundra for 1.9 APR for 36 months? How about a Camry 1.9 APR for 36 months? Or a Corolla 1.9 APR for 36 months for qualified buyers? It is Bill Penny Toyota, 256-837-1111. They are the presenting sponsor of Talking Ball for the 4th and final day of SEC Media Days. Now, coming up here in just a couple minutes, we're going to take you downstairs to the podium where Auburn head coach Bryan Harson is set to meet the media, visit with reporters. Now, Bryan Harson will have a busy day here in Atlanta. His day will start at 9:05 as he will meet with the main media, what they call the main media. From there, he will meet with the electronic media, and then he has stops with Sirius XM, Marty McGee, CBS Radio, SEC Radio, and SEC Social. So Bryan Harson has a busy day. It'll all start here in about another minute as the commissioner is getting ready and set to introduce Bryan Harson. The Auburn Tigers schedule looks like this. They will open up play on September 3rd as they play host to Mercer. Now, the Auburn schedule is very favorable in that front half as they will take on Mercer, San Jose State, Penn State, Missouri, and LSU. Auburn will not leave Jordan-Hare Stadium until October 8th. 6 weeks into the season will be Auburn's first road test, and it'll be a doozy as they will travel to Georgia. In fact, it marks back-to-back road Saturdays for the Auburn Tigers. After 5 straight home games, they will travel to Georgia and then travel to Ole Miss to take on Lane Kiffin
Welcome to Thursday.
And the Rebels. All right, let's send it down to the podium. Commissioner Greg Sankey getting ready to introduce Bryan Harson on the 4th and final day of SEC Media Days. Today's coverage presented by Bill Penny Toyota.
Seasons in 7 bowl games. In 2014, Bryan was the National Coach of the Year finalist. He launched a podcast series this summer that is now 9 episodes in, entitled Huddle with Harson. It's one of the top-rated podcasts on Apple with a 4.9 out of 5 rating. I just had fun. He and I share a mutual appreciation for all things related to the Ford Mustang. And he's, over the last several years, been working on restoring a vintage Ford Mustang and could actually talk more mechanically than I was prepared to participate in, but I think I played it well. His father did spend time as a professional drag racer, which started his love for motor vehicles. And he and his wife, as a personal note, started dating in 8th grade. It's my privilege to introduce to you this morning Auburn University head coach Brian Harson.
Yes. All right. You can hear it outside. Good morning, everyone, and glad to be here. Before I get started, I do want to recognize someone that was a large part of Auburn history and Auburn football, and I've got a privilege to hear some of the stories here, but Buddy Davidson, who passed away on Tuesday at the age of 82, many called him Mr. Auburn. And his lifelong devotion to Auburn is second to none. He came to Auburn as a student manager, as a freshman from Montgomery, was part of the 1957 national championship season, became the SID after graduating, and also then did that for 20 years. In 1981, became an AD, assistant AD handling football and travel, other special projects, and retired in 2007. But he saw, this is what was fascinating to me, he saw every game, home and away, for 61 years. So 1957 to 2017, and he stopped his streak at 700 games as he suffered a stroke in 2014 that limited his mobility and speech. So anyhow, to his family, our condolences, all right, and thank you for the support in War Eagle. Second time here, and excited to be here. And I know some of you out there looking at me didn't expect me to be here, all right, at this time. And I'm going to dive into that here in just a second and kind of address the gorilla in the room here. But really proud of where our team's at, and I'll talk about some of those guys that are with us today and the work that we've been putting in. But going back to what happened back in February, and what I'm going to do now is address it, and moving forward, that'll be the last time I talk about this subject. But there was an inquiry. It was uncomfortable. It was unfounded, and it presented an opportunity for people to, personally attack me, my family, and also our program, and it didn't work. So right now, our focus is on moving forward, and what came out of that inquiry were a lot of positive. There was a silver lining in all of this, because what I saw from our players and our coaches was leadership opportunities for them to step up, which is exactly what they did. And you got a chance to see guys provide leadership. You got a chance to see coaches provide leadership. And what it did, it was united our football team. It united our players, united our staff, it united our football team. And so I'm really proud of our guys, and I'm proud of what something like that, that could be very challenging and difficult for a lot of people, how our guys stepped up and handled it. And we had coaches and players that could have went on and went to different places, avoided all the adversity and the challenges and everything that came with it, and they didn't do that. They're here, they're working extremely hard, and they're doing a fantastic job, in my opinion, to get themselves ready to go for this season. So that'll be the last I talk about that, and there's plenty of interviews on it, so if you want any more information on it, just go Google it, okay? So anyhow, as far as our team, there's 3 players with us right now, and those being Tank Bixby, Derek Hall, and John Samuel Shanker. And let me just talk a little bit about them quickly. And I'll start with Derek Hall. Derek's a guy that is instrumental in our defense, playing on the edge, and in my opinion has grown so much over the course of last season and this season. He's a tremendous player, great worker, but just who he is as a person. That's why he's here representing our university, and I'm excited about his progress he's made and where he's going with his game and also his leadership. John Samuel Shanker, recently married. All right, so he's settled down, and one thing about John Samuel, he played baseball until this last year, and we all know what the baseball team did, so he was so proud of his guys, but I know it was killing him as those guys went out there and had a chance to go on and do some of the fantastic things that our baseball team was able to do. But he's going to have a tremendous season. Broke records last year as a tight end, continues to improve each and every day. And just his mentality that he brings to our team and to this program is extremely important to our success. And then Tank Bixby. Tank is obviously a fantastic player, but I think the most improved overall just in preparation, leadership, and some of the things that we've seen from a really good young player. And his work ethic is second to none. I mean, he's put in the work. He does it on the off days. He does it on Sundays. He does it every chance he gets. And you've probably seen some of the videos that he's posted out there on things he's doing. But extremely proud of those guys and of our team and of our coaches just for the work they've been able to put in since January. Spring practice, how we handled that, how we've handled the summer and some of the new rules and things that have come our way. Those guys have done a tremendous job. So I'm very fortunate to work with fantastic people and to be around fantastic kids. And I am excited to be the head football coach at Auburn. And I'm looking forward to this season and getting started. You know, we got a little bit of an interesting schedule with 5 home games. I'm sure we'll get into that with some of the questions. But with that, we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Coach. If you have a question, we have Lisa, Jim, and Jesse that can get a microphone to you. And we'll go ahead and start here in the center aisle, Coach, about 4 rows back.
Good morning, Coach. Johnny Ballpark Franks with Franks Media in Nashville and Huntsville. We often hear the importance of self-evaluation, not only personally, but also from a team concept. What did you learn in year 1 that will help you in year 2 and moving forward with Auburn?
Yeah, well, I think self-evaluation is the number one thing we should all do every year. I mean, that's the one thing we go back after every season and review, like, what did we learn? And it goes all the way back to everything from nutrition to what we're going to do in a 4th down situation. But as far as for myself, I mean, just being a leader, being the head football coach, all right, being in that position, you go back, evaluate, all right, how did I do those things? You know, how did I lead? And really, you want to evaluate, did the message get across and did it get executed? All right, the vision that was provided, all right, was that being executed like, you know, I expected it? And did I provide the right expectations and standards for those things? And in a lot of ways, yes. In other ways, there's areas to improve. And I think that just goes back to your communication and relationship, you know, with your players and your coaches. And one of the things, you know, in this offseason, we made some changes. We have some coaches on our staff I've been with. We have some new coaches that have been brought in that I think have been instrumental in getting to where we are right now. We've had some new players through the portal and through high school players that have come in that have been great additions. And so, you know, my biggest take from last season is, you know, I think as we build, you know, we got to continue to lay out the expectations. We got to continue to have great conversations. We got to continue to build relationships with our players. And I think the one thing that's made the biggest difference is, you know, bringing some guys in that are helping to make that happen as well. And the alignment that we all need to have in order to, you know, be able to execute those things at the level that we all expect. So, you know, that's what I've taken away from that, and we'll continue to keep growing and developing each and every day, just like our players. It's no different for coaches. I think anybody that thinks they've got it all figured out, they're wrong. And every day you're striving to get better. Every day you're learning. Every day you self-evaluate, and every day you got to find a way to get better.
Coach, we'll stay over here on our right-hand side.
Hey, Coach. Steve Moulton, WZZN from Huntsville, Alabama. I have been listening to your podcast and thoroughly enjoying it. So that leads me to this question. Harder to do, put a winning football team together or rebuilding? I think when you were talking to Dana, you talked about rebuilding a Trailblazer. So rebuilding a car or putting a football team together? Which is harder?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot less pressure on building a car. Yeah, I can tell you that. You know, it's all part of the process. I think everybody, I'm sure everyone in here has something that you do that has a process, whether it's your work or something that you personally enjoy. Building cars, being around cars, that's something I personally enjoy. It's something I grew up doing. And what I had a chance to be a part of taught me about details and preparation and safety and all those other things But our football team is the focus. I'm glad you enjoyed the podcast. That's been something that I've thoroughly enjoyed. You know, the coaches get to come over, and we spend 4.5, 5 hours at my house, and we're just talking. And so that's time spent with coaches on my staff where I get a chance to get to know them even better. And they get a chance to share their story. And we got fantastic people, and that's really the purpose behind it, is for everyone to hear like what these fantastic people have done to get to where they are. And you know, we all go through the same challenges. We all go through a lot of adversity. But as far as our football team, that's the focus. That's the number one thing. And it happens each and every day. You know, we talk about 1-0. We talk about how do we make today the very best day for each individual player, coach, staff member in our program, and how do we do that collectively as a team? To me, that's really what the goal is, and that's what our mentality has been. And I think that's why we made, you know, some really good advancements in our program, is because we've had that identity. And that will show up. We get into practice, we start doing the work to get ready for the season. Those things will, you know, they're going to show themselves, and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of where our guys are at because of those reasons.
Coach, we'll go here to our left on the far aisle.
Coach Michael Giddens, War Report, Auburn. Going into year 2, recruits may have questions about the identity of Auburn football. You guys have got some work to do on the field this upcoming season. What is the messaging to recruits about why choose Auburn at this point, and how are you guys internally addressing some of the negative recruiting that might be happening this offseason?
Well, I think the message is watch. But we got to go out there and we got to play. I mean, that's the beauty of what we get a chance to do every Saturday, all right? When you get into the arena, you have the opportunity to go out there and settle the score, all right? You have a chance to compete. And that's really what we do this for. We do it so that we can get into that arena and have that opportunity. And so I would tell, and we've told our recruits, watch. And I think the ones that have been on our campus, they see the energy and the vibe and what's happening and how the players are responding and coaches are connecting and everything that we're doing. I mean, there's a great energy in our program right now. There's alignment in our program right now. And I know those recruits and families, they feel that when they step on campus. And Auburn sells itself. It really does. It's a beautiful campus. It's a phenomenal stadium. The people there are fantastic. Everything about it is what you want to be a part of. So now we got to put a product on the field that players want to be a part of. You know, we want to go out there and be successful. Our guys know that. We know that. But our identity, I mean, we're going to develop our players. That's one thing. I know there's been a lot of conversation about name, image, and likeness in the portal and all that. But we're all about development, and we're trying to develop these guys so that when they leave, they're ready to go on and be successful and continue what they've built in our program. I mean, that's one of the best gifts you can give anybody, and I learned as a young coach and experiencing that as a player is development, and we can't forget about that. And I think that's something through character, through discipline, through toughness, all right, through conviction and understanding what that truly means, through integrity and class. Those things are what college is all about. Those are things that we're providing guys with an opportunity to learn and develop in our program. So, you know, it's really about that. And I think it's, you know, when you get on that campus too, like that spirit, that energy, that vibe, they know it. Now we got to go prove it on the field.
Coach, we'll go right in front of me, about 4 rows back on this near aisle. Drew.
Yes, Coach Harson, Drew DeArmond, WZZN Radio, Huntsville, Alabama. I wanted to ask you, you talked about your staff and retooling it. One guy that's going to be crucial because your wide receiver room, there's going to be a lot of guys that need to step up and produce. Landon King, a guy you converted from tight end, has said some very special things about Ike Hilliard. We saw what he did at Florida as a player and in the NFL. What kind of impact has he had on those guys so far, and what do you anticipate from him on your staff?
Yeah, Coach Hilliard, immediate impact. You know, Ike is one of those individuals that when he walks into a room, there's a presence about him, and you know he knows what he's talking about. And I think the first day he was in that room with those wide receivers, he told them that he loved them and he was there to help them get better. When he spoke to our team, we did this exercise with every one of our coaches where they got a chance to get up in front of the team and talk about leadership. And Ike's been there. He's done it. Everything those guys want to do, he's been a part of it. And before he began his talk on leadership and what he thought that is and how he was going to explain that to our guys, he told our guys, look, hey, I'm here for you. And if there's any questions you have or anything you want to know, just come by and see me. And it was very cool and just right to the point. And so, if you want to be a part of something at the next level or you want to know how to do it, he's the guy to go talk to because he's been there, he's coached it, and he's done those things. But as far as just his knowledge on the football field, in the staff room, they're second to none. This guy's phenomenal. I mean, we're very fortunate to have him. I love working with him. I love his energy, love his enthusiasm, love everything that he brings to the table. And those wide receivers now, when you got that guy standing up in front of you, if you're not listening, you're crazy. And he's just got that presence about him. So he's got the attention of that room. He's got the attention on the offensive side. And he's certainly got the attention of the team. And he's one of those additions, just like some new players coming in. He's one of those guys that you bring into your program that makes an immediate impact. And you know that, like, this guy's a difference maker. And he's certainly that. So extremely excited about Ike and happy that he's with us and looking forward to what he's going to do with that wide receiver room. Now he's got more depth. He's got more players. He's got guys to go out there and compete, and I think that's going to be a big part of that room succeeding in the future.
Coach, we're going to go over here on our right side, about 3/4 of the way back. Straight ahead.
Hi, Coach. Travis Brown of the Bryan College Station Eagle. What has Zach Calzada brought to your program, and what plans do you have for him in that quarterback room?
Yeah, Zach has been awesome. He's really been awesome. One thing when you're talking about quarterbacks, and I would say any position, but when you transfer, and this goes for all transfer guys, I mean, for whatever reason, that first opportunity that you took didn't work out. And also being a young player and then transitioning to that second year, you also realize you don't know what you don't know coming in. And the one thing about Zach that I appreciate when I asked him, like, what are some of the things that you've learned, like I was asked today, and it was really just about what it takes to be successful at this level playing that position. And so every day he's been there, just the work ethic, the focus, the attention to detail, the little opportunities to do more when he has a chance to do that, that's really become his foundation. And so, we appreciate that. We appreciate his leadership. We appreciate just his work ethic. And he has experience. He's played. The only unfortunate thing is we didn't get a chance to have him in spring because of his shoulder going through all the team periods because we hurt him during the season. And so it's one of those that you go back and look on it and you're like, damn, I wish that hadn't happened. But he's with us now, and he's getting his opportunities in the summer, and he's going to be full go in the spring. And so to me, he's provided a lot. And I think that quarterback room, the competition in that room, the mentality in that room, Coach Kesaw's done a great job because we're obviously going through a competition right now. And every single one of those quarterbacks, they bring something to the table, and they're all pushing themselves, and they know, like, it's really just about them. It's really about when they get their opportunity to make it count, but also support each other, be great teammates, and then, hey, we'll make a decision on who gets to play, and, maybe it's a couple guys that get an opportunity to play down the road. We don't know that yet, but there'll be a decision made at some point going into that Mercer game of who our starter's going to be.
Coach, we're going to go in section in front of me, about 3/4 of the way back.
Good morning, Coach. Jacob Goins from
morning.
ESPN 106.7 in Auburn. Looking at your schedule this year, obviously it's hard. It's one of the toughest ones in the nation, like it is every year for Auburn.
Does anybody have an easy schedule in the SEC?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
But you do start the year with 5 straight home games. How important is it to get off to a hot start before getting into the back end of a tough schedule heading to Athens?
Well, home or away, I mean, you want to get off to a fast start regardless. It's great to be in Jordan-Hare Stadium. I think that's going to be, it's so unique. People have asked me, I've never been a part of that. How it was all set up and done, I'm not asking questions. All right, we got 5 home games, and, our stadium, when we were flying over here with Tank and Shank and Derek Hall, we were talking about just different places they played, venues and all that. And our stadium, I don't think there's a better one in the country. And just being a part of a couple games last season, it's phenomenal. So to be around our fans, to have those teams coming in and playing in Jordan-Hare, we're excited about that, to have a chance to be home for 5 straight games. It doesn't really provide any of that travel and some of those things that you talk about as a coach, that we're going to face adversity on the plane and all those other things. But who knows? Maybe the bus breaks down on the way to the hotel at home, right? There'll be something that goes on that we'll have to challenge ourselves to overcome. But yeah, we're excited about it, and I'm looking forward to, those 5 games at home, having great crowds, great support, that environment that we all know is the best in the country, to be out there going crazy and cheering on our football team, and hopefully we're having success, through those 5 games. And you're right, we get into that back half of the season. It really doesn't matter who you play. You get into that half of the season, that stretch right there, that's the one that, really determines, especially in November, who's going to have a chance to be in those playoff games and who has a chance to play for championships.
Okay, we're going to stay right next door. We have another question.
Coach, Joseph Goodman, AL.com. Good morning.
Good morning.
How did your attitude change after the inquiry in February, and what did that teach you?
Well, I kind of talked about that. I mean, that's one thing. Again, anytime we're going backwards, and this is what I've told our team, anytime we're going backwards and talking about the past, we're not moving forward, we're not in the present, and we're not talking about the future. And so that was really about it. I mean, it was quick, to the point, with our players, and we moved on. So, and that's where our guys are at right now. And those guys we're focused on bigger and better things. And like I said, this has brought our team closer. It's made us, in my opinion, a much stronger football team and program, and that will continue.
Coach, we're going to go right in front of me, about 4 rows back. Kirk.
Kirk Bowles from the Austin American-Statesman.
Oh, yeah. How are you doing?
Brian, you're clearly familiar with Texas and coached against Oklahoma. How steep do you think their learning curve will be once they join the league?
Well, they got time. That's one thing. And I've followed Texas, just having a chance to coach there. I've always followed that program, and I've always appreciated people that were a part of that program, and my time with Mac, being in Austin, and, know some of the staff there as well, both staffs, really. And so, that opportunity, when that comes, they're going to have, they're building their teams. They're figuring out in their own conference right now. I mean, they got to win now. That's really what the focus is, I would imagine, for those teams. But when it comes time, when they enter the league, and who knows, by then there could be a few more changes. At that point, we don't know that. I mean, this thing is changed, significantly in a short amount of time. But both those programs, they're powerful programs. They got a lot of support, playing in that league too, and both those teams in particular, and that Red River rivalry, that's a big game. And so you understand the passion that each fan base has. And so they're bringing, we're bringing 2 really good programs into this conference to be a part of what we're doing here.
Coach, we're going to go all the way to the back, right in front of the goalpost there, straight ahead of me.
Hey, Coach, Mike Griffith here with AJC Dog Nation. Yesterday, Kirby Smart spoke of the importance of Georgia getting their home game back in Athens against Florida. I guess I'd ask you to reflect now as an Auburn man, how important was it in Auburn history, do you think, when Pat Dye was able to move the Iron Ball back to the Auburn campus as far as the importance of that home recruiting weekend?
Yeah, I was never a part of that before. I've heard the Pat Dye story, and I think everybody that was a part of it thought that was the right move, and that was big time for him to be able to get that done. So, having a chance to play in your home stadium, I mean, that's a special opportunity for your teams. It's a reason why guys come to your programs, because they want to play there. They want to be a part of that. So I think what Pat Dye did, making that happen, and certainly what we experienced this last year in the Iron Bowl, those things, you just don't get that, I don't think, in another venue, in my opinion. So I don't know all the details of what George is dealing with and things like that, but as far as what Coach Dye was able to get done for Auburn and Alabama, and how that Iron Bowl has worked out, I mean, everybody knows in the country what the Iron Bowl is. Doesn't matter where you are. If you watch college football, you know that game, and you are watching it. And whether it's played at Jordan-Hare or in Tuscaloosa, either way, I mean, people are going to be viewing that, and it's a big game, and it's just different.
Coach, we'll go right down here in front of me, second row. Bob.
Hey, Brian. Bob Holt, Arkansas Democrat. Is that I had a 2-parter. Kevin, he's always good at helping out if a coach forgets the second part. You guys had a great one in Fayetteville last year. Then obviously the rest of the season didn't go your way. How tough was that? Maybe how's that impacted motivation with the guys going into this season? And then the second part, you had 2 veteran SEC guys as coordinators. Then you made changes and promoted guys you were more familiar with. How do you think that's worked out? Why did you decide that was important to do?
Yeah, the Arkansas game, that was a good game for us against a really good team. Coach Pittman has done a tremendous job in that program, without question. And you could tell, that's one of the most physical teams that we played. And you knew that going in. You knew that mentality was going to be a part of that program. So we were very fortunate to win that game. Our guys did play well. We executed well in that game. And then, the second half of the season didn't go our way, but there's reasons why. You can go back and after every game, you evaluate, okay, what were the things that happened? And there are things that we can control. There's things that we can do better. And so, that's a continuation of just learning from that and applying it to this season. The second part of the question was?
About the coordinators change?
The coordinator change. Those guys, right now, Jeff Schmedding and Eric Keesaw, both those guys. I think, one, let me just back up a little bit. I do know them, but they're very qualified to be in the roles that they're in. Jeff Schmedding is one of the best football coaches I have ever coached with. And I'd like to say that I've coached with some really good coaches and been around some great and fantastic people. And he knows the game. He prepares himself, one of the best I've ever seen. He's able to articulate the vision and the message that he wants to get to the staff and the players. And, he's one of those guys, as a head coach, you don't have to worry about. He's going to get the job done because it's more important to him than it is to me. And you want to be around guys like that. Eric Keesaw is no different. Eric is a guy that I've worked with, coached wide receivers. I've known him for a long time. Got a great story. We work really well together. I think we mesh well. I think the ideas that I have and he has and the staff has are all going to be implemented into what we do on the offensive side of the ball because he can organize people, he can align people, and he can get his vision and message across very clearly. So both those guys, they're great coaches, and that's the reason why they're in the position that they're in. And Rock Ballantoni, who's going to be our special teams coordinator, he's been a head coach before. He's been around football quite a long time, and he's one of those guys that knows the position that I'm in and how important that special teams coordinator is to go relay the message to the entire football team. And that's one of the beauties of your special teams coordinator. He gets the whole entire team. So all 3 of those guys, I don't worry one bit about what they're doing each and every day and how they're doing it because their jobs are more important to them than it is to me. And so you just want to be surrounded by people like that are driven and motivated, and they want to be the best. They want to be great. And everything I've seen from our players responding to those coaches has been absolutely perfect. Those guys are doing a great job connecting, they're communicating, they're doing all the things they need to be doing as coordinators. And as far as the staff cohesion, I think the reason why we're a lot further along is because those 3 are leading that and making those things happen.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions. We're going to start in front of me about 3/4 of the way back.
Hey, Coach. Henry Patton, AuburnSports.com. Hey, the running back group and the defensive line group have gotten hype, and deservedly so. But is there any other position group that's kind of flown under the radar that you think will shock people this year or surprise people this year?
Well, I think there's a lot of other positions. I'm really excited. I like our tight ends. That's a part of what we do in our offense, so I've always felt like that group will continue to shine in some of the things that we're able to do offensively. But I'm really, I'm excited about where the O-line's at. I think the guys are stronger and bigger, and they put a lot of work in. And that's been a group that, since I got to Auburn, that, has kind of been under the microscope. And so, we've got to be able to handle the guys up front and do a great job, especially with 2 great tailbacks behind them. So I like where the O-line's at. And then, we'll see where our secondary ends up. I think we've got some good young players in the secondary. You haven't seen them. They're unproven on the football field, but we get to see them every single day and the work that they put in and what Coach Etheridge is doing with that group. So those are just a couple there that I feel good about and guys that have stood out.
Take one final question, and Coach, over here to our left.
Coach Harson, new bias, WillbornAL.com. Hope you're having a good day.
Thank you.
Two parts. One, you went on a lot of stops during the spring. What were some of your favorites? And then, as an Auburn coach, how important is it to you to keep the Georgia game, to keep the Alabama game as scheduling may potentially change in the next couple of years?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, so all those events, you got a chance to be a part of a few of those as well. Anytime you're with Bruce Pearl, it's no fun. All right? So those of you know that know Bruce. We had a great time. Bruce is phenomenal. Alan Green was at a few of those. Dr. Roberts was at a few of those. President Roberts was at a few of those opportunities as well. But those were chances, we don't get a chance to go out in the spring and recruit. So those are opportunities for us to get around people and talk about our program and where we're going and just share that message. And every single event, I wouldn't say there was a bad one. Every one of them was fantastic. We had a good time. Bruce and I, Cole, Kublik, other Andy Burcham, they got to help with that and just MC it. And we got a chance to answer some questions, but those are always a good time. And so I appreciate that, and we enjoy doing those things. That's an important part of just what we do. That's an important part of just building, those relationships and connecting with people and sharing that experience as well. And then what was your second part?
Important. Scheduling Georgia, Alabama.
Yeah, so, just as far as, those games, that's, go back, Georgia and Auburn, right? There's history. Alabama, Georgia, or Alabama, Auburn. There's history. Those teams, we're going to play each other. There's history in those games. And I know this. I know our players are excited about having an opportunity to play those teams. And one of the things, too, it really fits into our footprint in recruiting. Georgia's got great football players in that state. Alabama's got great football players. And, so I think those games, whether it's the Iron Bowl or having a chance to play against Georgia, those are important games for Auburn and certainly ones that you want to play in and you want to be successful in, because right now, those are the games that you get an opportunity to go in there and play well and win those games. It changes your season. It propels you very quickly, to be one of the more successful teams. So I'm sure that will continue and certainly, something that in the history of these programs has been really, really important to where we are now.
Coach, thank you for your time this morning.
All right, thank you.
That was Auburn head coach Brian Harson. And Brian Harson came out of the gates there right away and addressing what happened back in February, saying that is it. It is done. I am done talking about it. We are moving on. You even heard a bunch of questions, including one from 97.7 ESPN, the owns Drew DeArmond as well. Brian Harson now beginning his rounds here at SEC Media Days. Time for us, though, to take a break. When we come back, more Talking Ball right here on 97.7 ESPN, The Zone, presented by Bill Penny Toyota. Indeed. Welcome back. Talking Ball 97.7 ESPN The Zone, coming to you from the SEC Media Days inside the College Football Hall of Fame. On the second floor is where we are. This is day 4 for everybody. And, of course, today's coverage presented by Bill Penny Toyota, right along University Drive. Give Bill Penny Toyota a call, 256-837-1111. You just heard from Brian Harson, the Auburn Tiger head coach. He is off and running. Feels like a golf round. He's up there on the first tee. He's hit his ball right down the middle of the fairway, did Brian Harson, and now he is making the rounds. Feels like a round of golf for all the coaches here.
It does, and I thought he was, succinct and impressive. He dealt with the offseason first, and then he delved into his football team. I had a chance to ask him about Ike Hilliard, who I think is a very intriguing hire. They've got to get more production, Scott, out of that wide receiver room. We kind of said that to end hour one, with us. And so, but we've got our next guest, and he's one of my favorite people. This is one of my favorite times of the year because I get a chance to spend a lot of one-on-one and FaceTime with him. And you heard him recently on Talking Ball, but we had to have him back, of course. It's a rite of passage, and he is someone that's a fixture in the city of Memphis. I called him a football historian because he has such a passion for college football in the SEC. He does pre- and post-game for the IMG Learfield Radio Network for the Ole Miss Rebels. And, of course, he's the host with Gabe Kuhn, who I've had a chance to connect with this week, Brett Norsworthy from 3 to 6, each on Sports Radio 56 WHBQ. And he's with us now. Brett, how are you?
Drew, that's very kind. Thank y'all for having me. Always fun to be with y'all, and impressive the workload I've witnessed from y'all. And your listeners in the Rocket City should be you should be very glad that you have this hard-working team to bring you all this coverage. I see it every year. I know it and feel it every day. And when I join y'all, you can feel the passion for it. And I don't think you can do anything well without passion.
No, sir.
And we have it for this. A lot of the listeners out there, they have it as well. We're fortunate enough that we're on this side of it, and it's been a great week. And to the SEC, I was very critical of 2018 here.
Yes.
I think this year has gone swimmingly. I think it's gone exceptionally well, and sounds like it's a certainty. Next year's Nashville. I think we'll be back here soon, and I think someday they're going to try the Dallas thing. Could be a while before we're back at good old Birmingham.
Mm-hmm. We've got 2 head coaches left, Josh Heupel and Jimbo Fisher. But up to this point, your thoughts on what you've heard from the other 12 coaches?
Very impressive from Coach Nick Saban. I think the biggest voice in the sport, the greatest coach in the history of college football. I never dreamed I would say that because I was a Coach Paul Bear Bryant devotee. Coach Bryant and Archie Manning, October 4th, 1969. I fell in love with this sport from watching that Saturday night ABC game with Chris Shanker and Bud Wilkinson and Bill Fleming on the sideline. And since then, I've never been disappointed by this sport, and Coach Saban's at the top of it. I thought Sam Pittman was very impressive in how Sam Pittman pays tribute to where he was for most of his career in that assistant coaching room, and the credit he gives to his assistant coaches. And from Kirby Smart, the national championship coach, probably nobody in this building admires Sam Pittman more than Kirby Smart. So you could feel that. Thought Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach, representing the 2 schools out of Mississippi, did well. And Brian Kelly, with not so enviable task to finally be in front of that assembled SEC, largely Southern media. And thank you for him not having any affectation with any accent. And he's going to win big at LSU. A guy breaks Newt Rockney's record coming off the years that he's had at Notre Dame. Only the 2nd coach ever to leave there for another job. The first since World War II. He's going to win big there. But for Brian Harson today, good start for him. 2 more to go. And Jimbo, everybody was waiting for him and knew he would be asked a lot about the May theatrics. And now it's all going to be about his player now suspended in the last 24 to 36 hours or arrested.
Yeah, and what will we take from that? I didn't think the culture was very good at Florida State. We see what the rubble that he left. And to have this happen to a guy that he was supposed to have here, that's supposed to be a leader on his football team, one of his best players, to me it doesn't sound good.
It's just a continuation of, other than the press conference the day he was hired and a good COVID year with the Orange Bowl win over North Carolina, give me all the highlights. Give me anything that's been extraordinary about his run in Aggieland and signing day. and we know why through the A&M collective. They're very resentful. They really push back on anything untoward. I don't know that they did anything untoward. They probably were well within the rules, but he looked very guilty in May, and he still sounds very defensive and very guilty now. Even their media that's here, they're very sensitive about being asked about it. Look, y'all did it. You've never recruited like that ever.
Right.
So when you wake up one morning and you've won the Powerball, you're going to attract some questions.
And some scrutiny.
Do you think, because when these coaches come in, just to paint a picture, they get on a private plane. It is the school's plane. They fly in the day of. They don't come in the day before. So Jimbo Fisher more than likely is in air right now, about ready to land and make his way over here. He's got a sports information director sitting next to him. Usually it's the main individual there on the campus. Do you think those two are going over what to say? Do you think somebody is telling him how to handle today, or does Jimbo Fisher sit back and say, I've got this, I know what I'm going to say, I know how I need to navigate this? Because he may or may not get peppered with a lot of questions that are going to make him uncomfortable.
I think it's more the latter. I think his own hubris, his own idea of himself. And he did win it all at Florida State against Auburn in a game that I thought Gus Malzahn, just pure D, gave away. Keep pounding Trey Mason with Prosh leading the way and keep the ball in Marshall's hands, and he didn't. But nevertheless, so he got his title. He's got his big money. I just don't think he's that good a coach. He left Florida State in rubble. And the exit from A&M, I don't think will be happily ever after.
Well, we saw Dennis Franchione same way. He leaves Alabama. They think they've stolen one, and as Owen said, you guys got the better end of that deal.
Well, sure did. And when he left at the time, I said, doesn't he know they don't make a movie about you going from Bama to A&M? It's from A&M when Mama calls that you get a movie made about you.
Well, Jimbo Fisher obviously will close down the College Football Hall of Fame, but your guys' coach in your backyard, Lane Kiffin, got everything going on day one. And for the most part, it was just kind of a oh-hum day, I think, in regards to Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, but he really is candid about where we are, and he uses some of the buzzwords that still are uncomfortable for a lot of us around college sports. The NIL is cash on the barrelhead. It just is. He's talking about a salary cap. We hear terms like player personnel director. We hear general manager. I mean, those are all NFL building terms. Of course, he's, and his past with the Raiders and his dad's past, it's a lot of NFL culture in them. But we even get, some NFL terms out of Coach Saban a lot of times, and that's just where we are now in college football. It is professional sports. It really always has been. I'm almost glad we're past that, that garbage at the NCAA basketball tournament of that moderator about the student athlete. They are, I know that, but nobody's there to talk about academics. Nobody. And I would guarantee you, if you ever went to an NCAA tournament and you did this, when they called on you and I said, hi, my name is Brett Norsworthy, WHBQ Radio, let me ask student athlete, whatever. Let me ask, what's your favorite class? How did you do it? How'd you do in accounting? How did you do in college algebra? Tell me some of your professors' names. Tell me some of your students, some of your students that sit around you. They would get very uncomfortable with that. Stop that facade. Stop that charade of it, and let's just get down to playing and talking ball.
Exactly, and that's what we're doing with Brett Norsworthy, co-host of Sports Time, WHBQ 56 in Memphis, Tennessee. Can Brian Harson survive at Auburn?
He needs to beat Penn State on the Plains when they play in September. That's a big game, big SEC, Big Ten matchup. They played well last year up at Happy Valley. Had an opening. I love their running game. Who wouldn't? Auburn always seems to find a big-time running back. I heard you guys, before you went to the break and brought me in, it's the passing game. It's getting vertical. Whoever dreamed replacing Gus Malzahn was this hard?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean, Auburn fans were hot and cold on him. Want him out, want him in, want him out. And then you get somebody else in, and we want him out now too.
Yeah, and it's always a lot of upheaval there. And the biggest thing about Auburn has always been 155 miles away. You know, if Auburn was a standalone program like Arkansas, kind of a one state, one town state like the Razorbacks are, their history and their tradition, their game day presentation, I love going to games there. It would stand out. It does stand out. But then it is always shrouded by what's going on in Tuscaloosa and in the middle of the biggest dynasty in the history of the sport. And it's no seeming end to it.
Yeah, and is it Alabama and Georgia, Brett?
Yeah, it is. I thought the three easiest votes was one in the West, Bama, one in the East, Georgia, and 7 in the East, Vanderbilt. Don't want to pick on Vanderbilt, and I don't know what Clark Lee, what he's thinking about Vanderbilt getting ready to be the envy of college football, but whatever. I guess he's got to say that. The rest of it, 2 through 7 in the West, really tough. I have Auburn 6th in the West, just ahead of Mississippi State. I have Ole Miss 5th in the West, and that's because of tie break. You get into that muddled West, you get into that Arkansas, LSU, Ole Miss world, that's a lot of 4-4s and playing against each other. And when you have two teams 12-0, well, it's hard to crack through because that's gobbling up a lot of wins, a lot of league wins, and I do have A&M second. That was very, very grudgingly, but I have A&M second, Arkansas third, LSU 4, Ole Miss 5, State 6, and Auburn 7 in the West. That's how I voted. I may change before opening day, but we voted today, and that's how I did it.
Well, I'm going to vote later. I'm going to vote A&M 4th. I can't vote them in the top 3. I think they're overrated.
I have that reluctance about them. I think Arkansas gets them, and I think Alabama plasters them.
No doubt. Well, Brett, thank you for the time.
It's going to
be 3 to 6 Central, 4 to 7 Eastern today, and that's going to be you'll hear him on Sports Radio 56 with Gabe Kuhn. Great show. One of the best in the state of Tennessee, along with Sports Radio WNL, both those stations to bring you such great sports talk. And Brett is the king of Memphis, and we appreciate you for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate y'all's hard work. Thank you.
Brett Norsworthy helping us wrap up our hour number 1. Don't forget, Talking Ball's going overtime. We're going to be on once again from 9 to 9:30 here from the College Football Hall of Fame SEC Media Days, Day 4, presented by Bill Penny Toyota, right along University Drive. Find yourself in one of those shiny new Bill Penny Toyotas today.
It's just a feel-good tweet for text.
I mean, hellfire. I mean, we didn't even have shampoo in our freaking shower. So what are they complaining about? I mean, some extra soap in the dishwasher. Good Lord.
It is the overtime edition of Talking Ball, 97.7 ESPN, The Zone. The final 30 minutes of our time on air, at least, here at SEC Media Days. We're going to be going until 9:30. The Tom Abraham Show will kick it off at 9:30. Josh Heupel will hit the airwaves here on 97.7 ESPN, The Zone, at around 9:35 this morning, the Tennessee head coach. And then Jimbo Fisher will close down the show here inside the College Football Hall of Fame. That is how we are wrapping everything up. We're wrapping it up today, presented by Bill Penny Toyota, right along University Drive. Find yourself in one of those brand new Bill Penny Toyotas, 256-837-1111. It is Bill Penny Toyota, the presenting sponsor here of our final day in Atlanta inside the College Football Hall of Fame.
No question, and we have a special guest now with us on Radio Row here in the College Football Hall of Fame. We recently reconnected with him on Talking Ball, and he was here yesterday hearing Mark Stoops, and as his mantra states, it's not personal, it's personnel. And I think Mark Stoops is very excited about his personnel and going into year 10 at Kentucky, trying to be the winningest coach in the history of the Wildcats. He will be, and he will pass Coach Paul Bear Bryant this year. And it's going to be with Kentucky Sports Radio, part of On3Sports.com. Freddie Maggard. Freddie, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are y'all doing? Thanks for having me on.
Doing good. Your thoughts so far? I mean, we only have two coaches left, Josh Heupel and Jimbo Fisher. Some people are excited to hear Jimbo. Some people are like, well, we're not going to hear anything. But we got two coaches left. But your thoughts on the other 12 that we've seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a good event. It's different than Hoover. It's more spread out, but I've enjoyed that. Mark Stoops, I thought, hit all the points he needed to hit. Didn't learn anything new about Chris Rodriguez Jr. I thought that was something that we might find out about.
Yeah.
But Will Levis was one of the biggest stars here. I mean, I think there's a lot of intrigue about the Kentucky quarterback, a lot of projection to the NFL. Had too many turnovers last year. Needs to clean a few things up. Saban, interesting. Did not get a Jimbo Fisher question during the Q&A session. That was interesting to me. But overall, I mean, there's not been anything earth-shattering, or there's not been a lot of controversy in this media days. I was glad to see Harson address the inquiry in his opening remarks, get it out of the way. I thought that was a smart play. Clark Lee's opening remarks, 17 minutes, that was a little bit of a stretch, but it's been a good event, and I look forward. Now football season for me starts off, and here we go. Be busy until January.
Well, and one thing I was happy to hear from Coach Stoops, because I went to Pearl Cone High School to evaluate this kid, and he was probably the best high school football player I saw in person last year. And in fact, I know he was. I went on a Thursday just to make sure I could see him. Alabama was involved with him at the time, but Kentucky, when I met the young man the previous spring, over there when we were at a play date for basketball with Huntsville High School, I went over there, and his coaches, we played over at Pearl Cone. They introduced me to him. He had a Kentucky shirt on.
Yeah.
So I knew he was seriously considering them. But sounds like he and Coach Stoops was forthright and said he and Will Levis were talking about this kid who just got on campus. But Barry and Brown, I'm telling you, he could be – he has a chance. Now, he didn't have the QB in high school to get him the ball consistently. He's got a guy in Will Levis who has unbelievable arm talent, who now has a year under his belt. I think Barry and Brown could be one of the best newcomers in the SEC, depending on the neck up, Freddie. This kid, I know you love watching tape. He's got a chance to be special in the Kentucky uniform.
Yeah, he does. He does. And Kentucky has another true freshman, Dane Key, a four-star from Lexington Frederick Douglass High School that's going to start. So that's a couple of true freshmen, along with Brown, that Will Levis will have to use. You know, you lose Wandale Robinson, 104 catches, broke the school record. Josh Ali was second with 50-something catches. That's a big percentage of Will Levis's targets. So that's something that Kentucky, I think Mark Stoops said it when asked about his biggest question mark about this team, it's receiver. Tavion Robinson comes over from Virginia Tech, 50 catches last year. Barry and Brown, Dane Key, a true freshman. So there are some players They're young. They're unproven. They really don't have a large sample size to make an estimation or a projection. But receiver is a position that could decide how this team goes. But for me, the position group that will decide the win-loss column is offensive tackle. Lost two. Dare Rosenthal to the NFL, All-American Darian Kennard, NFL.
What a
you lose both of those
specimen
guys.
Kennard was. Wow.
Because interior-wise, Kentucky's as good as anybody in the league. Mid-year All-American Eli Cox moves from guard to center. Projected, I expect him to develop to be better than Drake Jackson and Luke Fortner, and that's saying a lot. Luke high pick with the Jaguars. Drake, one of the best to ever do it. So, and then Kenneth Horsey, all-conference preseason guy, guard, and then Tayshawn Manning comes over, transfers in from Auburn, and they really like him. But how Kentucky fares at tackle? DeAndre Buford at left, and then Jeremy Flax at right. Now, Flax was the #1 JUCO offensive tackle in the country a couple years ago. DeAndre Buford was a high 4-star from Detroit at left tackle. We'll see how that works out. 5-star Keontae Goodwin is playing left only. Let him learn that position. And David Wallabaugh is the rotating tackle. So I feel that Kentucky on offense, the tackle is #1, wide receiver #2. Defensively, now 2019 and 20, Kentucky signed a bunch of 4-star defensive linemen and a 5-star with Justin Rogers. That's rare for Kentucky, right? Okay. Anwar Stewart, the defensive line coach, has sent 4 to the NFL in the last 2 years. Now it's the young guys' turn to step up. Trayvon Ripka, Justin Rogers, Octavius Oxendine. How those guys pan out. Can they get after the quarterback? Can they stop the run? Because Kentucky linebacker-wise is as good as anybody. DeAndre Square, Jacquez Jones in the middle. J.J. Weaver's a rising star, and Jordan Wright's been productive for many years now. So that defensive front's going to really decide how Kentucky goes on defense. I think Brad White, the coordinator, is an absolute star. Everybody, LSU came after, a lot of people came after him. So Mark Stoops is very confident in his coordinator.
Tell you what, it is a salute to Mark Stoops, because as much talent as he lost off that ball last year, explosive talent, we'd be saying, well, it's going to take a year or two for Kentucky to kind of get that back to, possibly 10 wins. But Mark Stoops has put plenty of pieces in that cupboard, plenty of pieces on the field, and that is a true testament as to how far he has built this program, how well he has built this program.
Well, Kentucky last year, 14th ranked recruiting class in the country.
Yeah.
That's good for Kentucky because UK is normally a developmental program.
Yep.
Sign a bunch of 3-stars and move them into or develop them into NFL players. Now you get that. And I think Kentucky under Stoops and Vince Merrill, the recruiting coordinator, has been very strategic in the transfer portal. Not been like Ole Miss or others where, hey, we'll bring in as many as we can. Kentucky brings in transfers at positions of need. Keydron Smith comes over from Ole Miss, will be a starting cornerback. There's other transfers that, Tavion Robinson from Virginia Tech, Will Levis from Penn State, Wandale Robinson, Nebraska. I can go on and on.
Yeah.
But it's positions of need. It's not just a blank slate of, hey, let's bring in as many as we can. And I think that's the strategic, and that's how the transfer portal was intended to be. And I think Kentucky's done a good job there. But recruiting, this upcoming class is not ranked as high as some. But, again, Luke Fortner, 3rd-round pick this last year, was a low 3-star. Josh Allen, defensive end. Monmouth was a 2-star. So, that's what Kentucky does.
It's fun to say if you're a Kentucky fan, but do they have it for a 3rd 10-win season in a row?
Very well could. I think – looking at these schedules, Georgia at Kentucky could be Georgia's most difficult game.
Wow.
In November 19th at Kroger Field when it's probably going to be 33 degrees. And it's probably Kentucky's most difficult. Well, it is Kentucky's most difficult game. So my thing is I look at all these teams and the scheduling across the conference landscape. For Georgia to matter, for the Georgia game to matter in November, Kentucky has to beat Florida in September.
Okay.
And that's week 2. Kentucky beats Florida. I think Kentucky has a better team than Florida right now.
Agreed.
If Kentucky wins in the Swamp, they're going to start 4-0, and then you go to Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss has 20-something
transfers
through the portal. You don't know how they're going to be. right? Lane Kiffin's offense is heavily dependent, overly dependent on the quarterback position. Is Jackson Dart going to be able to replicate what Matt Corral did? Will Jackson Dart win the starting position? It's still not decided yet. So there's so many questions there. But Kentucky, again, for Georgia to matter in November, you got to beat Florida in September.
And then I think they need to win at Tennessee because for whatever reason.
It's been that way for so many years.
It's been such a weird series where even when Tennessee, and they've struggled for so long in the last 15 years, Kentucky's had some of their best teams, and they lose last year 45-42. And Coach Stoops is now 2 years ago they destroyed them in Knoxville, and I thought that was the key, really their biggest win of that season, and the key to getting Jeremy Pruitt out of there.
Yeah, last year Tennessee, you give Josh Apple credit, which I do. I like him. I respect him. I'm a big fan of Hendon Hooker. He played Kentucky extremely well at Virginia Tech, and then last year lit him up too. Yeah. But he exposed. Kentucky was exposed last year at the cornerback position. Really only had 2, and then converted a safety over. That was it, because you lost 2 out going to the portal, and then you had just a gaping deficiency at corner, and that hurt Kentucky last year because the Cats had finished number 1 in the SEC in pass defense for 2 consecutive years until 2021.
Ultimately, they've beaten Florida.
Yeah.
They have beaten Tennessee in the past. What would it mean for this program to get a win against Georgia finally?
It would signify that it can happen. I mean, if it can happen in Lexington, it can happen. Yeah. And how many years you all been to this event and really nobody paid attention to what the Kentucky coach said?
Exactly.
You know, it was about like Clark Lee. And I'm not no disrespect to Clark Lee, but not a lot of people were dialed in because, Vandy is Vandy. And again, no disrespect, but, what Stoops and Merrill and that staff has done has been nothing but short of outstanding, tremendous. Mark, let's just talk about it. Mark Stoops, longest tenured coach in UK history, 10 years. 2 wins away, and he'll get that easily this year from passing Barry Bryant, the program all-time leading wins. 6 consecutive bowl games, program record. 4 consecutive bowl wins, program record. Josh Allen won every defensive award, Ray Guy award. I mean, NFL draft picks, everything that you can gauge or that you can measure a program. Mark Stoops has increased that in Kentucky, and it's been a long road, and he's worked very hard.
Well, Mitch Barnhart did a great job with the facilities and upgrading everything. Kentucky's got great. That's why he didn't go to Florida State. Kentucky just got better facilities and support than Florida State.
That would have been a step down, to be quite honest.
Really, and saying that
Isn't
now,
that amazing?
that shows how far Kentucky football has come because he stayed there. He's going to be the all-time winningest coach. He doesn't look like he wants to move at all. He's got his brother in there, Mark, now on the staff. I think it's been just amazing. And I'm going to say something else. I thought about this today. What if, because I'll freely admit everybody was kind of calling it. I didn't believe it until I saw it. We saw Joe Burrow, who I thought was good as a junior, become otherworldly as a senior. What if Will Levis and these freshman receivers make an impact? He can rip it. Coach Stoops was adamant about his arm talent. What if he makes a huge jump?
Yeah, I mean, he can. I mean, last year – you got to realize Will Levis has played for 6 offensive coordinators.
That's amazing.
This is his first time in his career that he was a starter going into fall camp. So he's rather new at this. And for what and you can't when you evaluate Will Levis, you can't look at the entire season. Look at the last 5 games.
Yeah.
That's why everybody's looking at Auburn like, okay, you're going to be a 500 or below team because of the last 5 games. Look at Will Levis's last 5 games. He absolutely torched Louisville, Iowa. I mean, big time games. So that's the trajectory that he's taken, and that's why the NFL is so infatuated with him, is because of his arm strength, his toughness. He's got the it factor, the confidence, good leader. He needs to quit lowering his shoulder a little much. That's, that could be a little dangerous, but he's got it all. And I always say when you got a quarterback, you got a dude at quarterback, you got a chance. And Kentucky's got a chance because of Will Levis.
Well, the way they do, and we certainly know that you're the dude for us with Kentucky football. We love you, Freddie, and it's been great to reconnect with you and get some FaceTime and see you over here at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. And we we look forward to having you on throughout this season. We think it could be a special one in Lexington, and we know Kentucky means a lot to you. You played for Coach Claiborne, you were a quarterback there, but some special days coming ahead, and it's been a special last few years for Kentucky football, and we've enjoyed watching Coach Stoops, and I think they're going to be a top 4 team in the SEC. I'm picking them behind the Georgia Bulldogs in the Eastern Division, but we appreciate the time today.
All right, go Cats. Thanks.
Thanks. Let's get that break in here from SEC Media Days. The final day of SEC Media Days presented by Bill Penny Toyota. In the zone, this is our 4th and final day here of SEC Media Days. The Auburn Tigers making their rounds even as we speak around the College Football Hall of Fame. Derek Hall, John Samuel Shanker, and another one of those is running back Tank Bixby. And if I can pull this up here.
Tank, with nearly 2,000 rushing yards already in his career, has a chance with a big season, Scott, to go over the 3,000-yard mark.
Here is just a little bit of
we have
Tank
and he's
Bixby.
ready for questions. Who would like to lead us off? We'll go right here in the front.
Anthony Patterson with the Atlanta Voice. Tank, I noticed even at the Georgia State game, but other games, a lot of people from where you're from or the 706 area really bonded, even though maybe you guys won or whatsoever. What is so special about the 706 and the bond you have with guys who maybe you played with or you're playing against?
Well, when my mother got married, we moved to LaGrange, built relationships with teammates and friends, and a couple of those guys came to Auburn with me, and it's great, to have experience with them in high school and college, and it's different.
We'll go on the aisle here, third row.
Tank, Brian said this morning that he thinks you might be the most improved player on the entire team in terms of what you've done in the offseason. You were a guy that already rushed for 1,000 yards last year. So in your mind, what does an improved season look like for you?
Well, just doing the little things and making sure I do everything right like I can, and always just carry myself in the manner that I need to be and doing the right thing for my team and being a team player first. And that's what I've been doing this summer, coming to work and being a team player first.
On the right, second row.
Tyler Shaw with KBTX in College Station. I wanted to ask about transfer quarterback Zach Calzada. I don't know how much you've been able to work out or practice with him, but just what have you seen from Zach and what he brings?
Zach, he brings leadership. He speaks up. He brings a lot of things. He's a talented guy, and he's smart. You know what I'm saying, and he has what it takes to be a great quarterback. You know what I mean? And should see how that goes, and hopefully it go good.
All right, that was just a brief bit of Tank Bixby, the Auburn running back. If you want to hear his entire conversation, head over to our YouTube page, WZZN TV, and you can hear the entire Tank Bixby conversation coming up here in just a little bit. Just couple quick thoughts there. I mean, he's talking about Zach Calzada, and he has worked out with him. If you follow social media, Zach Calzada's videos are everywhere. Mm-hmm. Tank Bixby a part of that. And they're also talking about the fact that he could have a big year.
Yeah, he could. There's no doubt about it. If Auburn's going to win 8 games and be better than 6th or 7th in the West, which is a lot of what a lot of people are predicting, Scott. Yeah. And if that's the case, I don't think Harson's is going to be long for Auburn. And if you heard Jake Crane on our show Monday, he talked about Hugh Freeze potentially, being the next coach at Auburn. But I mean, we'll see. Tank needs to have a 1,300-yard year. He needs to be over the 3,000-yard plateau. He needs to be healthy. He needs to be the bell cow of that offense. And I think whether it's Zach Calzada or T.J. Finley, I don't think stylistically they'll be really different. I think they're both pocket QBs with strong arms. But I think, from what you're hearing, they like Calzada's skill set a little bit more. He does have really almost an entire year of starting under his belt at Texas A&M for Dirt Neck. I had to get that in one time before we were done. But still, we'll see. I mean, this Auburn team, to me, is kind of laying in the weeds a little bit. I do think Harson's much more, comfortable with Jeff Smetting as the defensive coordinator and Eric Kiesau as his offensive coordinator, and that matters. And I think the players are much more bought in and comfortable with his coaching staff. That 5-game homestand is huge to start the year. They need to be at least 4-1. And that game, I believe, in week 3 against Penn State is going to be huge because if Auburn can upset Penn State, which they nearly did a year ago, that's going to give them a ton of confidence going into the last part of that homestand, the last game will be LSU, who they broke a long losing streak to in Baton Rouge last year when Bo Nix was behind center.
That they did. All right, coming up here in just a minute, you're going to be able to hear Josh Heupel, the Tennessee Volunteer head coach, as Tennessee is getting ready to make their rounds. Like I said, it's like a round of golf. You step up to the first tee, you tee it off, and basically you just walk 18 holes. You walk around everybody and stop and play a little bit.
My last comment's going to be this. I like Alabama and Georgia, like everyone else. I like Alabama to win the SEC. Yep. I think the most overrated team in the West is Texas A&M. I think the most overrated team potentially in the East is Tennessee. So we'll see what happens, but that's going to be my predictions. And been a great week here at the College Football Hall of Fame.
All right, we're going to turn it over to the Tom Abraham Show coming up next. I2, Alabama, Georgia. Alabama winning it all.